The story I want to tell you today is about voting, and it starts in 2018 over at the Lane Carson Rec Center over in Reynoldstown. It was my first time voting here in Georgia, so learned a lot of things. Learned that the lines here in Georgia are ridiculously long. Learned that it's normal for people to hand out donuts in line to support their fellow Atlantans. But the main thing I learned is how little I actually knew about voting. So I remember walking up to the ballot box and I clicked my choice for the governor, right, which was the main election happening. And then I clicked next and then next. And I walked through about 20 pages of people who I had never heard of running for positions that I had also never heard of. And ultimately I left that day not really thinking much about it. But that moment was really the seed that would grow into my startup branch, which is what I want to talk to you about today. It's 2020, and I think no matter who you are, we can all agree that we want change of some sort. Whether that change looks like less government regulation, whether that change looks like police reform, whether that change is as simple as fixing the potholes on DeKalb Avenue. I think we all want change, but our system, our political system, seems a little bit broken and unresponsive to the sort of changes that we're asking for. So I started looking at how I could help that given my background. I'm a Georgia Tech grad. I've been in the software startup industry since graduating, and so I'm not involved in politics. But I started asking experts in the political field, what can we do to help this? And really I learned three main things. Number one is that your state and local governments are extremely impactful. Whether it is your mayors setting mask mandates, whether it is your county commissioners deciding whether or not to implement COVID testing, or whether it is your district attorney deciding whether or not to prosecute police officers after people die in law enforcement custody. The second big thing that I learned is that your vote goes so much further in these smaller elections. At the presidential level, you are 1 in 180 million, and at some of these smaller offices, you're 1 in 20,000, which is like 3,000 times as effective for the same vote. And the last piece is that it is so difficult to be properly informed about these elections. So when I was spending my 2 hours in line in 2018 before I voted, I tried to do some research and just very quickly got overwhelmed and kind of quit. And even if you push through that, you do your research, you spend maybe 3 hours reading through candidate websites, and ultimately you still are unconfident in your decisions because there's gaps in the information, or the information that's out there has bias associated with it. So to solve all those things, at the beginning of 2020, I created Branch. And Branch is a free, nonpartisan website that makes information about state and local races very convenient and digestible. So you enter in your address, we walk you through what's going to be on your ballot, who's running for what ideas they're running on, who's funding them, and ultimately why it matters to you. Now, what's important too is also how we do this. So we interview all of the candidates and we ask them the same straightforward questions about their platforms and their backgrounds, and then we make that interview audio available through our website, and you can just play the audio directly. And for some of the races, we even produced podcast episodes to make it more accessible. So there's a lot of questions with this idea, right? Will candidates participate in these interviews? And the bigger one, will people pay attention to state and local governments if we make it easier? And so what me and my team did is we set a really high number for our last launch, and we said, all right, if we can reach 10,000 voters for the June 9th election that was happening in Georgia a month ago, then we can verify that people really are interested in this. And so we launched at the beginning of May, a month before the election, and in that month, I'm proud to report that we reached over 17,000 people that came into our site to learn about these state and local elections. We interviewed over 70 federal, state, and local candidates, and ultimately these are real voters who now had a reason to stand in line for 4 hours because now their vote meant something more than if they just voted for the president. So we had a really exciting start. We're going somewhere big, and there's a really tangible way that you can help, which is you can go to our website and learn about our Kickstarter. Now, we've just launched this, and it's going to be running through the end of August, and I'd really appreciate your support if you could become a backer of Branch. Ultimately, if you believe in unlocking the power of everybody's vote, if you believe that state and local governments and elections should be easier to understand and actually be accessible for people, and you believe that these elections are a way to bring change from the bottom up, we really would appreciate you becoming a backer. Thanks.
Walter, I love that idea. I love
appreciate
that
it.
you're bringing transparency to voting because I think we definitely need it, especially during this time. So, what is your strategy to get more people to know about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so main thing that we're doing right now, and I'm really excited about it, is we are working with a bunch of community nonprofits and organizations that do community outreach, that are involved in their communities, and we're working with them to, number one, understand what issues are important, especially what issues are important to the parts of Atlanta that we don't talk to on a regular basis, to make sure that that's represented within the interviews that we cover. And then the second is we use these organizations to provide Branch as a resource that they can do to actually encourage more people to get out and vote within their communities.
I love that. I love that.
Thanks.
So when we were learning about the work that you were doing, there are 3 things that we could be a big contribution to you at this time. So number 1, the Plywood team would love to support you in your business planning. So we would like to give you a scholarship for foundations in the fall, which is valued at $500.
Wow, awesome.
Number 2, we heard your greatest need right now is to get awareness around what you're doing. So we reached out to some friends at NPR, and they want to do a story for you in September and share it with the Atlanta community.
Wow, I really appreciate that. Thanks.
And lastly,
Okay.
we feel like this is something that everyone needs help with. So if you believe in this idea and you see the need for it, we're asking for you to help Walter by clicking on the link in the chat and support his Kickstarter campaign. Let's get this project going. Just give $10 and support his big dream. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank y'all.